figure of body for many years to come. Amen. So as we are well aware, the main drama of the Exodus story is played out in the give and take, the back and forth between Moses and Pharaoh. Moses, per God's instruction, goes back time and again to Pharaoh, urging him to let my people go. And as we know, when Pharaoh doesn't comply with the request, Moses informs Pharaoh that Egypt will be hit by another plague. And that is exactly what happens. Actually, it happens 10 times to be precise. But as you can also imagine, for someone like Moses, who is slow in speech and a reluctant leader and messenger, this must have been extremely draining. So you would think, or at least I would think, that Moses would have asked for and received help from his people, from the Israelites, those who he was about to get freed, especially from the elders. But what happens when Moses approaches the Israelites with the message that God has heard their cries and will soon be freeing them, delivering them, redeeming them, taking them out, bringing them back to the promised land? The Torah tells us very plainly and to the point, they wouldn't listen to Moses. They wanted nothing to do with Moses. The Israelites turned their back on Moses. They offered him no help for his mission. If Moses wanted to go to Pharaoh, and if he wanted to bring a few plagues, if he wanted to liberate the Israelites, he's going to have to do it alone. The Israelites were not going to help. They were not going to get involved. And the question is, why not? The Torah actually gives us two reasons. It's because they suffered from two maladies. The Torah tells us, Kotzer Ruach u'me'avoda kasha. Now, for those Hebrew speakers, the second term, avodah kasha, it's easy to explain. Avodah kasha means hard work. Okay, the Israelites worked hard. After all, they were slaves. And so it's easy for us to understand how their hard work, their slavery would make them tired or make them exhausted. They didn't want to fight. And even if they could believe in Moses' message of liberation, they were in no physical condition to do anything about it. To put it another way, they had no strength. After all, doesn't that happen to us all? Don't we get tired after a long day or a long week of work? Don't we say, Amachaya, Shabbos, it's the weekend. I need to relax, can't work anymore. I need time off. Of course we do. It's natural. It's a human reaction and a human need. We're not created to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For that matter, neither was God. He too took a day off to rest. And so we understand the Bnei Yisrael, the Israelites' physical exhaustion. Maybe we can understand why it was too difficult them to jump on Moses and say, yeah, we're with you. Maybe the thought of so many trips from Goshen to Pharaoh's palace, and who knows how long it was, and the roads, and that, it's too much. But the more important term, as well as the more difficult term to understand, is what the Torah says first. The Torah first says, Kotzer Ruach. So the question is, what is exactly Kotzer Ruach? Now, Al Chumash translates Kotzer Ruach as the spirit crushed. Rashi understands the term to mean a shortness of breath. And Shimshon Raphael Hirsch translates Kotzer Ruach as impatience. It's clearly a term with multiple meanings, but the translation or explanation which I prefer is offered by Nachum Sarna. Now Nachum, he translates Kotzer Ruach as a shortness of spirit. Sana explains that the Israelites had little spirit left. They were spiritually broken. They had no more emotional or psychological energy left, and therefore they had no more fight in them. They had become so conditioned to slavery that they were emotionally numb. No potential for freedom. Not when you're in that state. Psychologically incapable of accepting the challenge that Moses placed in front of them. In other words, the Israelites did not listen to Moses because of a psychological rather than a physical inability to understand their current situation and to realize that they, in fact, had a hope, they had a future, and they had a destiny as a nation. And thus, while avodah kasha, physical weariness, and kotzer is easy to understand, kotzer ruach, spiritual weariness, is far more difficult. It explains why we today resign ourselves to living in bad situations only because we don't have the strength to change the circumstances of our lives. It also explains why we resist change, even when change will create an improved and a wonderful lifestyle. Kotzer Ruach is indeed a very bad condition. Unfortunately, though, it's part of human life. We all go through it at various times, some more than others. And as we see, it is a syndrome, it is a malady that was named by God himself, not some modern-day psychologist with a PhD and whatever else they have. No, God tells us of this. Kotzer Ruach is a very powerful human condition. It gets us down. It led the Israelites to refuse freedom, to refuse nationhood, to refuse chosenness, to refuse a land that they could call their own, and to refuse a future for their children. What about today? What about today? Aren't we all tired? Tired from hearing about all the horrific things that are going on in the world? We feel it so bad that we become resigned to it. We throw our arms up and say, oh, I can't handle it anymore. I can't listen anymore. As Jews, we are so beaten down by terrorist attacks, by the surge in anti-Semitism, by the constant anti-Israel reports in the media, by everything that we have seen and heard, particularly since October 7th, that we've become immune or resigned to it. And so for many of us, we just give up rather than fight back. We get a case of Kotzer Ruach. And as individuals, don't we suffer from Kotzer Ruach at times too? We're tired of our own situation. We're frustrated at work, or because of health, God forbid, family situations. We no longer have the energy to fight back and make changes. And yes, experts will tell you that Kotzer Ruach is the leading cause of suicides. Nevertheless, Kotzer Ruach is a condition that we all can and must overcome. Now, back in Egypt, although we were suffering from Kotzer Ruach, fortunately for us, Moses wasn't. And so he took the lead, and he fought for us. Unfortunately for us today, we have many leaders across all walks of Jewish life. Not just elected leaders, but ordinary Jews who have stepped up in this time of crisis to also fight back against Kotzer Ruach that plagues the rest of us. There are examples of how we must fight against our becoming Kotzer Ruach, tired and apathetic to the problems that surround us. I don't know if any of you have been watching this monkey court that's going on with South Africa and the ICC. Somebody asked a question, and I thought it was a very valid question. They said Israel could have just ignored it. Basically put a finger up at the ICC and told them they weren't participating in this Mickey Mouse trial. But they decided not to. They decided to go, and they decided to make Israel's side heard very clearly, very succinctly. There was no Kotzer Ruach there. No Kotzer Ruach. Those are the leaders we need, that let the world hear over 2 days of counter-arguments. Very well put together. So thank God we have leaders who are prepared to stand up in the face of, for what for us seems never-ending tyranny. But I have another question, and that is, why does Kotzer Ruach come after the words of Avodah Kasha? Why didn't God put Kotzer Ruach first if Avodah Kasha is the result of Kotzer Ruach? And the reason I believe is because it was only when our spirit was restored, when we were emotionally and psychologically ready for the fight, a process which did not happen overnight, but over time, after witnessing the 10 plagues, for instance, that we had the physical strength to finally pack up and leave Egypt. And as the old saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. And the Israelite spirit wasn't restored in a day. But with God's mighty hand and Moses' leadership, it ultimately was. And there is a lesson for us in these words. It is the importance of not living with a Kotzer Ruach, with a broken spirit. And its importance of realizing that just as the spirit isn't broken overnight, so too it can't be restored overnight either. It takes time, but it's something that we must devote our time to and our focus to. And that is why we must all be willing and able to restore a broken spirit, whether it's our own broken spirit, our loved ones, our friends, our neighbors. We must try to always keep a positive outlook and realize that the spirit comes first. Because if the mind is willing, if the spirit is willing, the body will follow. You need look no further than those who survived the Holocaust as perfect examples. Most of them never gave up. And while their spirit might have been dampened, even broken, it was never extinguished. We really can't lead full, happy, and productive lives if we have Kotzer Ruach. But we can if we are the opposite, if we are Maleh Ruach, if we are full of spirit. We can't live our lives by constantly focusing on all that is wrong with our lives, or on all that is wrong with the world. That will inevitably lead us to a Kotzer Ruach, not a Maleh Ruach. But we can and must keep focusing on what is right in our lives, on what is right in the world, the beauty of the world, because there is a lot of beauty as well, and doing what we can to help fix that which is broken. That, my friends, is what is called living with Maleh Ruach. We can't think for a minute that we are too old, that we are too sick, or there's just nothing that we can do about a situation or a problem. That is Kotzer Ruach. But we must believe that there is always more that we can yet accomplish for ourselves, our loved ones, our community, the Jewish people, and yes, even the world. That is living a life. That is Maleh Ruach. Ruach is a joy. Ruach is hope. Ruach is optimism. Kotzer Ruach, on the other hand, is the opposite. Which would you rather have in your lives? Every day in the Brakot HaShachar, the blessings which we begin each service. What do we say? We thank God, Hanotein Layaev Koach, He who gives the weary strength. Every day we are tired, whether spiritually or physically, but every day we must thank God for giving us new strength and then live that day with that strength. We must live every day with newfound ruach, without thinking about and focusing on just the hardships of the previous day, without worrying about the unknown hardships of tomorrow. And remember that at the age of 80, Moses was still climbing mountains. So every day, let us stop, whether it's here, during services, or at some point from the comfort of our homes, and take a moment to appreciate, find, and take advantage of the renewed strength that God has given us each day. And then let us ask ourselves, are we Kotzer Ruach or are we Maleh Ruach? Let us choose the latter. Let us choose Maleh Ruach. And let us resolve to live each day, each and every day of our lives, regardless of what comes at us, as a Maleh Ruach, with and full of Ruach. Shabbat Shalom.